Adlib is the DSP-agnostic buying platform to scale your programmatic campaigns smarter, faster, and more profitably. Adlib helps independent agencies and marketers deliver premium programmatic performance without the complexity, cost, or overhead of traditional DSPs. Their platform provides the tools, data, and automation to run enterprise-quality campaigns, from CTV and audio to geofencing and YouTube, all under one roof with zero trafficking headaches. Plus, they're not just a platform, they're your growth partner. The Adlib team helps you win new business, expand budgets, and deliver measurable ROI that keeps clients coming back. It's time to unlock programmatic. Join leading marketers worldwide who are using Adlib to deliver more campaigns with better results. Check out getadlib.com. Welcome to Open Market, a podcast about building companies in the advertising industry. I'm Joe Zappa, and I'm joined by Eric Franchi. How are you, Eric?
Good, Joe. Are you a creatine guy?
I was a creatine guy, but I actually stopped because I got weird kidney values or something, so I can't be on creatine no more. But yeah, are you on creatine?
Yeah. I'm a user of creatine, and I asked because it's the most researched supplement in history. It's presumed the safest as well, irrespective of maybe some of your values going up. And there's been a whole bunch of research about its benefit, not just on like physical, but on the cognitive, and how they're recommending it for like older people for memory or, preventative degenerative diseases. But there's one application that I've been hearing about that I experimented with and it works. So there's like a meme about like taking a lot of creatine. So recommended dose is 5 grams. People say, oh, forget 5, you need 10, forget 10, you need 20. They say that between 10 and 20, if you have a bad night's sleep, you slam between 10 and 20 grams of creatine in the morning, and that brain fog and memory loss that you might get across the day, just like not having like a great night's sleep, you don't get it. And I'm telling you, Joe, it actually works. Like when I have a bad night's sleep, like if I, for whatever reason, 5-6 hours or less, or just like a fitful night, I'll take extra creatine and I'm sure I feel it. It's like an actual measurable thing. So tip to you, unfortunately you can't do it, but definitely tip to the audience, take more creatine. This is not medical advice though.
Not medical advice or financial advice, though. Actually, if you want to get in on the next big supplement, I've heard fiber floated as like maybe one of the next big like supplement waves. So get on that Metamucil. I don't know who owns that, but you gotta back that company. That is financial advice.
If there's one thing I have come to appreciate is I should not be investing in B2C. I should be investing in B2B. We'll leave it at that. Anyway, enough about creatine. What are we talking about today, Joe?
Brian, our dear friend, Brian O'Kelly did a hilarious post yesterday. It'll have been a couple weeks ago when you guys hear this, where he recorded himself imitating and then editing a post that I think the Trade Desk's Jeff Green had done, and like criticizing their positioning as a means of highlighting the innovation Scope 3 is doing around agentic advertising, and also, of course, taking some shots, having been one of the founders of AppNexus.
This thing, just stop what you're doing now if you haven't seen this video. Go to Brian O'Kelly's LinkedIn, look for him recording a loom against a completely transparent screen of his LinkedIn with all of his DMs. Like, I don't know if that was intentional or not, by the way, but like my eyes zoomed quickly to the right rail. I saw all the people like cold DMing him. Pretty funny. And just watch it and then come back. And now that you're back, this thing was a masterpiece of trolling. So you have Brian O'Kelly, like one of the most successful entrepreneurs Adtech has ever seen, like taking minutes out of his day to troll maybe one of the few, just from an exit standpoint, value standpoint, more successful entrepreneurs in Adtech history, Jeff Green, the CEO of the Trade Desk. Backstory on this is Jeff, via The Current, dropped 2 op-eds 2 days in a row about the state of the open internet, and a big decision that TTD has made was basically like create a fork of Prebid. We don't need to go too deep into the details on this one, but it was fairly controversial. There's a lot of people on the sell side that are mad about it. And rather than just like having another thought piece about like why this is bad, Brian let it rip and trolled in like a way that, I've seen like people do this like on YouTube or what do they actually mean type of videos, but never in B2B marketing. So this broke new ground. And what's crazy to me is this isn't some like young, 22-year-old like YOLO founder doing this stuff.
Wow, come for Brian.
It's Brian.
Eric called you old, Brian.
Not at all. Not at all. I'm saying I would
He doesn't have gray hair.
I would expect a swarm of, like young founders doing wild stuff like this in our space. And we've pointed out this before. There's very few, Brian inclusive, and maybe one or two others that are like really doing things that are cool, memorable, pushing the limits. And, again, it's just an example of how there's so much opportunity being left on the floor. That's the context setting. What's your thought?
Yeah, excellent context. It's really worth thinking about this post and why Brian is so good at LinkedIn and so good at orchestrating attention. And I think two of the things you see in this post are he's very authentic, right? He just he has ideas and he just runs with them. And you can tell they're not workshopped to death. Like no comms department would have signed off on this.
Definitely not.
Yeah, traditional... Except for me.
Zappa.
I loved it. Yeah, but the traditional comms department is your worst enemy if you're actually trying to orchestrate attention and navigate the modern media environment dominated by social. And so it's very authentic to Brian, and he just lets it rip, and you can tell he's genuinely interacting with people from a place of curiosity and a desire to add value in the form of his unique perspective. And you will never, it's like the classic adage in business, you can't beat someone who's having fun. You will never compete with a founder for media attention, and that includes social media. If you are groaning and you're I gotta figure out this marketing team approved messaging I can put out there, and someone else is just loving this stuff and sharing what they love and engaging the industry and asking questions. So that's one, is be authentic. The other thing Brian does, and it's related to the first one, is he's super freaking present. Brian is as busy as anyone. He's already sold a company and made a lot of money. He doesn't need to be obsessed with this shit, but he is. And he just loves the game, loves the discourse. And he posts pretty much every day on LinkedIn. And that's the other thing, is that I can't tell you, Eric, how many of my clients and people, founders I talk to in the industry are concerned with the exact wrong thing, the exact opposite thing from what they should be concerned about, which is to say they are asking me, am I posting too much? The answer is always no. There's not a single person in Adtech who I'm you're just really flooding the zone, man. Brian probably posts more than anyone, and he posts once a day, right? The vast majority of founders don't get anywhere near that cadence. And if you look at the people who are masters at orchestrating attention in ad tech, like Ari and Brian, they post all the time, and they're just omnipresent. And so the reason you want to post all the time is that you have to understand the media environment in which you're operating. It's not 20 years ago when you would get a couple times a month to speak to your audience. And so those times had to be really freaking good because people were going to pay a lot of attention to them and everything was very slow. Now you can talk to your audience every day, and someone is talking to your audience every day, and they're seeing hundreds of messages just going by in the LinkedIn and Twitter feeds. So if you want to compete in that environment, you just need to be more present. You need to understand each missive is going to get less attention. And the way you win is actually just by building trust and familiarity over time from a lot of small touches. Brian's very good at that too.
The other thing is, and maybe this is inherently what Brian, Ari, and others who have done this have figured out, the algorithm works in your favor. You need to be less concerned about a mad post, because if it's a mad post, nobody's going to engage with it, nobody's going to react to it, and nobody's going to see it, because the algorithm is going to prioritize posts that are engaging, that spark conversation, that spark outrage, that get people, kind of all in a tizzy. So don't worry about it, because this stuff ends up, kind of falling by the wayside anyway. Why do they get concerned about that idea of posting too much? And, what's your advice? What is your specific advice?
Well, I think there's some different reasons. One is people say, oh, well, I just don't have anything to say. And if that's the case, I'm sorry, you're just not thinking about this enough. You need to, if you're a founder of a company, you definitely have, enough, you have enough learnings, you have enough on your mind that you can participate 5 days a week.
I can imagine it, right? If it's somebody that hasn't posted before, that hasn't done their own content thing before, I can imagine they're just where do I start? I don't know what to say. To your point, there's probably stuff happening all around them and in their inbox that they can turn into insights that they post. Do you have a set of prompts for them or a way to think about this stuff? And, I'm not asking you to, kind of give your playbook away for free, but in that type of situation, how do you get them started?
I always give my playbook away for free. Everything I've ever thought is publicly available on LinkedIn or my blog, or this infernal podcast. But I think you should do two things. I think you should have a sense of your overarching narrative. So you should ask like a series of questions. And again, you can find, I've written about this place that I call the brand narrative. Like ask yourself, like, what is wrong with the status quo? How are our customers being screwed over? Who are our customers? Like, whom are we championing? And how are we trying to change the industry to their benefit? So then you have a sense of the broad narrative you're trying to share with the market. Then I would come up with 3 to 5 content pillars, which are topics people are talking about that are related to your company. So like if you're Jason at TV Scientific, like you're going to talk about the outcomes era, right? You're going to talk about like the growth of CTV. You're going to talk about attribution because they have TV measurement technology, these kinds of things. And then every time something pops up in the news related to these content pillars, have something you can go comment on. And if you want to know what you think in relation to that, or you need a thought starter, go to an LLM, put in the answers to those brand narrative questions and say, this happened this week. Magnite is suing Google. What do you think my position would be in relation to this? And then you can talk to the LLM and you can figure it out if you don't know. And quite frankly, you could even say, hey, I like this style of LinkedIn post. Could you write a LinkedIn post? Like, with our perspective on this. And then you're going to want to customize it to your POV, obviously, but that's a good way to get started. So between like everything as a founder and the tools at your disposal nowadays and the resources, including the, Joe Zappa content library mechanisms out there, you should be able to create content at least a couple times a week.
That's super actionable. So what is our brand narrative? What are the 3 pillars? Okay, so news came out. Let me, just like dump those 2 things, right? The brand narrative and the 3 pillars into ChatGPT or my LLM of choice. Be like, hey, here is how like we look at the world and want to communicate through the world. There's this piece of news that just happened. Help me just connect the dots on what I might say, understanding like this is how the lens that we want to communicate to the world is. I mean, like, and I'm sure you get some good stuff out of that.
Yeah, I think if you do those 2 things, like if you don't have a brand narrative framework, you can email me. I'll give it to you. And j@sharpenmedia.com. And then if you answer those questions and you have those 3 content pillars, which again, quite frankly, an LLM can get you off the ground with that too, right? It should be able to say, here are the topics in digital advertising you might want to comment on. Again, like, ideally you have at least one smart human in your company or me to help with this. But if not, use AI. It'll at least get you started. But I think there's a bigger thing, Eric, beyond like knowing what to say, which is like, I think we sometimes ignore like how human this stuff is. Like, I think people are like often they're embarrassed. What it really comes from, I think, is they feel like if they're creating all this content, it's like frivolous and it's like for their own ego and they don't want to be seen as like self-aggrandizing. But that's the wrong way to look at it because it's not for you. It's for your company. Like this is how you market companies nowadays. This is the greatest tool at your disposal. You are always, as the founder or CEO, the highest leverage evangelist for your company. You are the one people want to hear from. In the olden days, it would be through the media, right? And if you would go to the media and say, our director of whatever, a mid-level contributor wants to talk to you, the reporter, versus our CEO wants to talk to you, they always want to talk to the CEO, right? And it's the same thing. People on social want to hear from the CEO of each Adtech company. They usually don't want to hear from a mid-level person unless that person has a really powerful reputation of their own. So don't look at it as self-serving. Yeah. It's truly not. You are building the reputation in the pipeline of your company, which is just marketing and sales. And that's always been a huge role for the founder.
But there are self-serving posts. Like, I think you see them less these days. But, if I just think about the various eras of social, like, humble bragging and, I am so humbled to announce and, a million selfies.
The stuff everyone makes fun of on Twitter. Yeah.
Yeah. That stuff, who cares about that? Right. Like you're not adding to the conversation to it. I think it makes a ton of sense. So Mike, okay, fine. So if we've addressed all of the main concerns that CEOs might have around, like being more present, and part of the conversation, it's just crazy to me that, there's just a small, super small subset of people that are just like owning it and sucking up all the air in the room. And maybe 2026 will be the year we start to see more people get aggressive with this. Hopefully, like, we'll be able to do our part, making sure they do. But if not, like, it's just like, it's the easiest game in town. Getting attention for your ad tech company by way of being in the conversation, at least right now, it's the best arbitrage, the best.
Yes, it's a very high leverage opportunity because so few people are taking advantage of it. And it's sharing your own insights, but I think there's an even more important thing in the beginning. And this is also a tactical note, which is you want to comment on the posts of people who already have the audience you want. So if you're starting from scratch, especially if you're a first time ad tech founder, people aren't going to know you. So it could feel like you're posting in the void a little bit. The way to get off the ground is you have to make a list of 10 people: Eric Franchi, Ari Paparo, Brian O'Kelly, Jason Fairchild, Tim Vanderhook, etc. You got to go out there and you got to comment on what they're doing, because that's how people will start to recognize you. Look at what Mafi did. All you need to know, if you want to do this, all you need to know is Jonathan Mafi. Look at his playbook. Like he ran the Sharp NCO evangelism playbook to a T. We joked about him being our reply guy, right? And he replied his way to an acquisition by Magnite. Like if you do that relentlessly and you're smart and you're thoughtful and you really add value and you don't just say nice post, people will recognize your name recognition will go up and your company will benefit as well.
Agreed. All right. Let's keep talking about the Adtech CEOs. This week, recorded as Friday, October 3rd, by the way. This week, you wrote a newsletter titled The 10 Things Adtech CEOs Get Wrong About Marketing. This is a little bit less about the conversation we've been having today. It's a little bit more about just how they might be thinking about marketing, not in a way that's as helpful to their biz. For folks that aren't subscribers to your newsletter, and everyone should, by the way, how do they subscribe?
Search Adtech Growth in 5 minutes and you will see it.
Got it. Okay. So for those who haven't received the newsletter, why don't we walk through those top 10 things and we'll play a little game of agree, disagree on all those points. So maybe we can talk about a few of them.
Yeah, for sure. So I did a solo pod on this a few weeks back, but now we'll get Eric's takes and we'll debate them. So Eric, my first few are... Here are the misconceptions. So each of these statements is something I disagree with, but that I think is commonly believed, whether it's openly said or not. 1, marketing is just an output. 2,
disagree.
2, marketing is not worth doing if you can't easily measure it in HubSpot. 3, events are the only form of marketing that works. What strikes you there? Output versus input, measurement, and events.
Yeah, no surprise. I disagree with all of these. And it's, I would just like encapsulate it as this is a old school way of thinking. This is thinking about marketing as a cost center. This is not thinking about marketing as, fundamental to the value of the business and how the business grows, right? Just thinking about like marketing as an output, or if it's not worth doing, if you can't easily measure it in HubSpot. This is just about like, hey, dollar in, did I get a dollar out? Where, there's a time and place for those types of lower funnel tactics. But if you're not thinking about brand and your narrative and how that informs everything from sales to product to the way you communicate in the marketplace, like you're already lost and you're just another one of these ad tech companies with an undifferentiated message. I thought the events thing is interesting. Events are the only form of marketing that works. That one, like, I think oftentimes events are like, unless you have that engine where you're counting the number of meetings and then connecting it to opportunities and then ultimately measuring it through HubSpot, in that kind of like classic, sales operator way, it could be like a waste of money. Like you're sending a bunch of people, they're hanging out, like, you may have like got some logos, on a screen somewhere. I would invest, particularly if you're not a giant company, invest elsewhere rather than just like sending people to events, doing pay for play speaking spots, like kind of hijacking, around it with dinners and stuff like that. Like there's a time and place for it, but I would not call it the only form of marketing that works. I would call it like a part of the marketing conversation you should like discuss. Like, is this worth oftentimes the massive investment?
Why do you think, as someone who, was an ad tech founder and advises a lot and invests in ad tech founders, why do you think marketing almost like uniquely suffers, I would say, from this like tactical perception. Like if you think about like an ad tech, like, leadership team, I think often marketing is either just straight up not represented, or it's kind of like it has like they're the marketers in the high chair, they're the baby of the group. Why do you think that is?
I mean, traditionally, most ad tech companies are like product and engineering led, product and engineering founders, product and engineering oriented. And that's what, kind of rules everything. And unless you are that special type of product oriented founder, and we talked about a couple of them over the course of this pod, you're not thinking about marketing as a growth engine to make, your product being successful in the world from day one at all, right? You're thinking about it as a cost of doing business. You're thinking about it as putting budget towards like getting this announcement, in a press release, in a trade. So I think it's just like, kind of like the old school way of thinking. And Uli has been a little quiet lately, but, the next generation of companies, they're like founders and they're, growth people from day one in many cases.
I agree, but I have a couple additions as to why this is the case. I think one is most ad tech companies, like, if you want to be really critical of ad tech companies, you would say they're just like relationship merchants, right? Like a lot of them, it's very like driven by founder-led sales in the beginning, and often like the product is like not very differentiated, and like what allows it to certainly get off the ground, and then even sometimes long after it gets off the ground, like survive over a period of time, is the founders' relationships, and maybe they bring in a few other people who have really good relationships. And so even though marketing can be involved in that, they don't see marketing as critical to growth. They think like it's all sales, where sales means like one person has relationships that they're going to be able to monetize. So I think that is one part of it. But I would say the problem with like over-indexing on like we grow through relationships and through traditional sales or biz dev is that, first of all, it's not how a lot of those like old school relationship guys do it anymore. Like for a lot of them, like the Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever is a big part of what they do. Like look at like a Matt Barish. He's the perfect example of that, right? Where it's like, he's like man about town, taking everyone to Knicks games, Mets games, whatever. But he's also super active on Twitter and LinkedIn. And he grows his reputation and continues to expand his circle through digital channels. So he does both, right? And I think the best people nowadays do both. Even looking beyond those individuals, it's like what I would tell people is marketing just pours gas on that fire, right? Like if you have some people with relationships, guess what? If they're posting every day about what you're doing as a company and what they're learning and they're asking questions, they're going to grow their network. Like Brian's a good example, right? In that it's like obviously Incredible Network was part of the founding of Adtech and sort of Adtech 1.0, but I would guarantee you through his like daily LinkedIn content over the last year, he's reached tons of new people who, like me, maybe weren't even around for Adtech 1.0, right? And they need to be like reintroduced to the Brian O'Kellys of the industry. I made another point that a while ago on the pod that is a bit like dour, but it's true. Like reputations need to be kept up over time. They don't usually flame out. Everyone, when it comes to reputational decay, everyone thinks about like the Harvey Weinsteins of the world, right? That's like 1% of reputational decay cases. What actually causes reputational decay in business is you just don't stay relevant because you're not out there, and like new kids come along and someone, you used to be the guy for X and then the new guy pops up and they're super hungry. So you can bet that if they're of my generation, they are going to be using digital channels and getting in front of the audience you used to command. So yeah, marketing is not dissociable from sales and building a business through relationships. Marketing is how you build relationships at scale, which drives sales. And any company that is crushing it at growth nowadays is doing both of those things.
Yeah, well said. Final point on this. I was talking to one of our portfolio companies. This is a Series A business, like incredible product, growing very fast, small founder-led sales efforts. And, they were asking me about, should I invest in, this large event type of thing next year? Should I do this? Should I do that? And they don't have a marketing function at all. This is all just like, sales, like on the field effort. And I said, what if you just made it easier for your current sales team and the sales team that you're looking to bring on with some of this new funding by investing in marketing? Right now, it's super hard for anybody from your company to like send an email and say, hey, I am Joe or Eric from company X. We do this. When you're just a completely unknown startup. Versus if they've actually seen your people posting, they've seen you, they've started to, let that algorithm get to the right people, then your seller reaches out to them and they're like, oh yeah, that's that cool company. I've seen their CEO posting. I've seen their stuff. Sure, I'll take the email, right? Or I'll take the meeting rather. It just makes their job easier, right? Just greases the skids, or to your point, puts gasoline on the fire.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Events definitely work. I do events for my own business, right? Like I went to Cannes, I go to Possible, I go to CES. Let's say it costs me and I bring a team member, let's say it costs $5,000 to do that. Look, I own my own little P&L, right? So I'm very happy when I spend $5,000 to go to an event and then it generates $100,000 in value. Like we all love to see that kind of napkin math, 20x ROI, but you have to understand that like I'm getting those meetings because I do the digital stuff, right? And I'm like on LinkedIn and Twitter every day. So the two feed each other. Like, yeah, it's still good to see people in person. And I also run into people, right? Like the events will be more effective because like I encounter a lot of people at events who know me and I don't know them because they're just their side. They don't raise their hand and tell me they're listening to my stuff or reading my stuff. So again, like the two feed each other and you should absolutely do events. But I would advise a company in the position you mentioned to do events in a small way, right? Don't take out $100,000 like sponsorship, like just send a couple people the first time. And if those people are active on digital, they're going to do a lot better. I will say that if I were hiring salespeople and they had no digital presence, like they weren't doing LinkedIn or Twitter at all, to me, that would be a huge red flag these days. Like, even if you're an old school person and you have a lot of relationships that you can monetize, like, why wouldn't you be actively expanding your network?
Yeah, well said. All right, what are the next groupings?
4, the press cares about my company, especially my partnerships and product launches. 5, I should start doing marketing right before a launch. Let's do those two.
Okay. The press doesn't care about you unless you are TTD, AppLovin, Amazon, Meta, or Google, or your business is somehow uniquely linked to them or some other like massive trend in the industry. So the press doesn't necessarily care about your business. The press cares about you if you have interesting things to say, if you bring like neat ideas to the table, if you help them connect the dots around key trends, but like your SSP partnership that is the 50th of its kind this month is really not necessarily going to move the needle. I'm sorry.
Guys, the press is just like anyone else. Like if you just go up to someone in the industry and you're like, I want to tell you all about what we're doing, and you show no interest in them or what they care about or don't think about their audience or their job, like why are they, they're not going to give a shit. So like Eric, it's funny, right? Sometimes I say like, you think the press and media relations is too easy because you were very effective at it, I think, when you were building Undertone. But the thing is that I think you inherently kind of get the discourse, and like Brian and me, you love the discourse. So you have a sense of like, what are people talking about? What is this like ad exchange reporter or Adweek reporter going to be interested in? And then how can I add value? Unfortunately, like 99% of people, they're busy. I totally get it. They're in their world. They're trying to build their company. It's a huge job. And they do not approach reporters from that angle. They approach reporters from like, you are a distribution channel and I have something to say and I would like you to distribute that information, which doesn't work.
That's so cold. But you're right. Yeah. And at some point you've built the reputation and they understand where you can add unique value. I get less press inbound these days because I'm an investor. Right. So if they're writing an article about investor trends, if they want to hear about some cool startups, if they want like commentary on the M&A environment, like they reach out to me. And that's the right thing. Like I should not be like showing up in all sorts of like random pieces or trying to show up in all sorts of random pieces about the ecosystem that has like no bearing on what I do. The other thing you said was I should start doing marketing right before a launch. And this is what I commented on. It's just like, so true, right? Like you'd spent all this time and money and the company like, coalescing around this like great launch, and you didn't think about how you're going to get this in front of all of your customers and influencers and prospects. Like, oh my God, how many times I've, just like heard like, okay, like let's start to put together the PR. Oh my God, so bad.
Yeah, it's tough because it's really the exact same principle as number 4, which is you have to think about your audience and what they care about and providing value to them and why they're going to care about you in turn. So often what happens is people are heads down, they're doing their thing. They think like, this is so innovative and interesting. Of course it may be, and it definitely is to you because it's what you're focused on. But your audience has a million other things going on. And if they've never heard from you before, they heard from you last time 2 years ago, you're not going to be top of mind for them, and they're going to treat you like everything else in the feed. They're just going to scroll past. They're going to be like, this company, I barely know what they do, or I never see the CEO. They're just not going to have that built-in like trust and care, and they're going to move on. It's more, what people don't understand is that social is more like Instagram. Like LinkedIn is more like Instagram than you think. Like people interact because they care about you and they know you. They don't interact because your shit's the coolest thing they've ever seen. When Eric does his very frequent Instagram posts, I don't comment on them because they're the best posts I've ever seen. I do it because we have a relationship and you want to exploit that in business as well.
I don't think I posted in 2025, dude.
No, of course not. Yeah.
Oh, God. All right. Then this next group is, I think it ties this conversation up well nicely because it's all the stuff that we talked about over the course of the first part of the conversation, right?
Yeah. 6 through 8 or 9 are really what we started the pod talking about in regards to Brian. So these are the misconceptions. We need to perfect every communication. I need to worry about overexposure. A great marketer or PR firm can make me famous. I need to go viral. And 10 is we need to talk about ourselves. These are all about having a misunderstanding of how the modern media environment works, right? They're all about like each little thing we do needs to be workshopped to death. I need to make sure it's like completely right. I'm afraid to be out there too much. And then in almost in
the pressure about one post, like, oh man, this is the one we got to like, make sure this one's great. Like, trying to go viral. You're a B2B like Adtech company. Don't worry about going viral.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, I'll use myself as an example, right? Like this year, I'll probably do like 20 deals, right? And my total like market in Adtech obviously doesn't have to be only Adtech forever, but for now it is. Like, what is my total market? Like a few hundred companies, if even. So it's like, I don't need to go viral. I need to like, I need to reach like 500 to 1,000 people, meaning like the CEOs of those few hundred companies and like a couple other leaders in the company. And the same is true for most of my clients, ad tech companies who are selling to, brands and big agencies and publishers. There is the separate issue of like if you're selling to SMBs, but that's like a whole other thing. And those people have a very different problem to tackle, as we talked about last week. But generally speaking, in ad tech, you should be posting way more often. You should be posting about the relation between your company and your expertise and what other people are talking about, as opposed to operating in a total silo. And you should not worry about going viral. You should worry about reaching those like 100 to 1,000 people who are relevant to you. And if you do all of those things, you're going to do well, and marketing is going to contribute to the growth of your company. And if you hire someone to do that, it'll cost what a mid-level marketing hire does. Again, 150 grand, 200 grand a year. And if your average deal is 60 grand or 100 grand or significantly more than that, you should be able to generate enough deals over the course of a year to make good on that investment if you are executing frequently.
Absolutely. And then the other thing, just to kind of bring it home, is once you start doing this, you start to understand that people are watching and people are listening, and people will approach you and say, hey, I've been reading your stuff. Let's have a conversation. And ultimately, they may or may not become a client. I think enough of them probably will become clients that you see how this stuff is, not that difficult to measure when, it comes down to it. It's not all about HubSpot. If you're present in the space, people notice, and oftentimes they tell you.
100%. All right.
Let's end it there, bud.
All right. Thank you, Eric.
We will see you next week, everybody. Bye-bye.